Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition. If I'm streaming right now and you're watching me, forgive me for the sort of the deer caught in the headlights. But my system is saying to me that I am not streaming, so I suppose I'll find out here shortly. In fact, you know what? Why don't I check right now? It says couldn't connect to my streaming server. I know I'm connecting with those of you on Instagram because I'm going directly through my cell phone to you. So you all get the privilege of seeing me no matter what, if you want to call that a privilege. For the rest of you, I'm not sure yet. I'm waiting for a response, but in the meantime, I will look at Facebook and see whether it is carrying anything, carrying the program. Like I said, folks, this is live television. Oh, no. You know what? Yeah, I am. Okay, great. Yeah, okay. Yep. Now, my computer, though, my studio computer said could not connect to the server. So apparently there was a momentary glitch maybe where I wasn't connected. But I am now. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, look, I wanted to open the program today talking about the president's interaction with the National Association of Black Journalists. I don't know whether you saw that, but apparently he was asked a very hostile question and treated in a very hostile way. And of course, President Trump, being President Trump, didn't mess around. I mean, he just jumped right into it and let that reporter know he wasn't appreciative of the way he was being treated. I guess they kept him waiting. Comrade Kamala was supposed to show up. She didn't. And then he gets this hostile treatment from this ABC reporter. It took me back. So let me just give you the context of this. You all know that when I was in Boston from 1990 to 1981 to 1990, I ran a radio station, a gospel radio station. I took over, I was representing the radio station as their lawyer. The radio station went bankrupt. It was owned by some people who were from New Hampshire and Maine, but they had bought the radio station as an investment, and it was being run by some people there in the local community who were running it as an R&B station. Now, the people who owned it from Maine and New Hampshire were a couple of white guys. The people who were running it were a group of black folks. And it was they who hired me, but then I ended up getting to know the owners in the process. They hired me as an attorney. In fact, I started doing that for them as a trade so that I could get on the radio and preach and teach God's word as a pastor. But I traded my legal services for that, so they didn't have to give me cash. They were giving me a radio program. But I nevertheless represented them and dealt with all their legal issues. And I got to know the owners in the process. So when the thing didn't go well and it went bankrupt, they turned to me. So I filed bankruptcy for them. And in the process, because, when I ran for office, the press said I had 3 bankruptcies. I mean, that was just, these people, they're so dumb. Because what they did was they conflated the radio station's bankruptcy with my own. The radio station went bankrupt. When I finished the process, and that was almost 10 years later, when things didn't work out the way I'd hoped that they worked out, which was for me to buy the radio station out of bankruptcy. But the economy went bad, financing dried up, the things started going downhill, and finally the bankruptcy court took it back and then sold it on the market on auction. So just to give you the backdrop of the story. So there wasn't any 3 bankruptcies. They were conflating the bankruptcy of the radio station with my bankruptcy, and I don't even know where they came up with the 3rd one from. There was no 3rd bankruptcy. But at any rate, that aside, I spent 10 years trying to make that thing work. So during the time I was running the radio station, I got known in the local community. I wasn't doing anything nationwide or national at that point. But I got known locally, and the National Association of the New England Association of Black Journalists, the New England Association of Black Journalists invited me to come speak at their conference because after all, I was a broadcaster and I was involved in radio, and so I was known. And they asked me to come and be a speaker at their conference, and I did. If my recollection serves me correctly, I spoke. I lived in the Boston area. I spoke in Springfield, Massachusetts, at their conference, which is at the other end of the state. Massachusetts is a very small state. You could drive from the eastern tip to the western tip in 2 hours. But anyway, I went out there and I spoke. Folks, I'm telling you, the New England Association of Black Journalists was the most hostile black audience I ever spoke to. And I've spoken to the NAACP a couple times, had that opportunity, certainly spoken to black churches, spoken to black groups, predominantly black groups and organizations. Some of them very friendly, of course, some of them kind of in the middle, some of them more hostile. I would consider the NAACP a more hostile group, but never mistreated, never in any way made to feel threatened or hated or anything like that, even though I knew probably most of the people in the room didn't agree with me. I was flabbergasted. Because I have to remember where I was at that time in my own development. I was not a national speaker. I was preaching primarily at my church and guest preaching at other places from time to time, but primarily in the local area. When I went into the National Association, a New England Association of Black Journalists, I was really naive because I really thought these were journalists. And of course I had to speak, and then there's some questions and answers when I got finished speaking. And I really thought that I was going to get probing questions and maybe a little challenge on some of my premises or conclusions. And, there was going to really be a nice, healthy, but professional exchange. Oh, no. No. I got the nasty treatment. I remember people standing up in the audience and entering into a diatribe against me because of my conservative views. And I have to tell you, I was pretty shocked because I just thought that these were people who were professional journalists who were going to take a professional journalism approach, which is, again, ask me probably some pointed questions, some tough questions, challenge me on some of the things that I said, but do so in a professional way. Oh, no, it was nasty. It was nasty. I remember one guy standing up in the audience. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was akin to, you sell out, and I won't go through all of the nasty things, people say in these kinds of regards, but it was pretty ugly. Ugly enough that I remember somebody saying, well, we got to, let's, I know we don't agree with him, but still, it was like, whoa. It might be, I said, well, he ought to have been put out. So, but anyway, I endured it, answered their questions, and when it's finally over, to polite applause. I mean, there wasn't any standing ovations. And so when it was over and I was on my way out the door and things had broken up and not very many people wanted to talk to me, but I still stayed and shook hands with people as they left. And it was, again, I mean, for the most part, it was obvious that people didn't agree with me or like me, but they were not impolite about it. One guy, I will never forget this for the rest of my life. And that was in the late 80s, my guess would be. And so that's what, 35 years ago, at least 35 years ago. One guy was going by and he shook my hand. He said, I agree with every word you said, but you see why I'm not letting people know that? And God looked at me and smiled and kept going. And I thought, wow, I agreed with every word you said, but you see why I'm not saying anything? And I kind of chuckled to myself, yeah, I can understand that. So the hostility that President Trump got doesn't surprise me a bit. Look, folks, please, I mean this with all my heart. Please pray for the black community. I'm not racial in my thinking, but so many of them, I'd say the overwhelming majority of them, are in bondage to race. Americans of African ancestry were set free in this country at the end of the Civil War, not on Juneteenth, by the way. That's another matter, but April 9th, 1865. That's the real liberation date, because when the war ended, slavery ended for all practical purposes. And then, of course, after Reconstruction, a kind of pseudo-slavery was re-implemented under the guise of segregation. Okay, an apartheid system in the South, in places where slavery had prevailed for so long, they kind of reinstituted the racial codes, if you will. But it was an eye-opener to me then, because I'm conservative then, and I realized that there's certainly some hostility against conservatives, because I've experienced it locally, because I'm expressing conservative viewpoints to all these black politicians, and they ain't liking it. They weren't having any of that. But the realization that race is a kind of psychological bondage for people, and it skews their ability to see life for what it is. Harris Faulkner was apparently at the event, and I saw her asking President Trump some questions that really went to issues. The economy. What are you going to do about inflation? What are you going to do? She was asking some questions about his actual policies. See, the other journalists weren't interested in that. They were interested in trying to make him look bad, trying to embarrass him, because, of course, he's racist, right? Well, how do we know that? Well, because everybody says so. That's what we've been told. Where's the proof? Well, we don't need proof, because it feels good emotionally to accuse Donald Trump of being a racist. And so, so when I say pray for the black community, I say that very advisedly, because I want to see our country deracialized. And I want to see us see each other not based upon skin color, but based upon our individual character. Because, again, I've said this so many times, your complexion tells me nothing about who you are. All your complexion tells me is your complexion. I don't know by your complexion whether you're honest or dishonest. I don't know by your complexion whether you're intelligent or stupid. Not that I want to call anybody stupid, but I don't know by your complexion whether you're competent or incompetent. I don't know by your complexion whether you're rich or you're poor. I don't know by your complexion how you grew up. It tells me virtually nothing other than what I see before my very eyes. And Jesus said, judge not by appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. I've got to talk to you. I've got to get to know you. I've got to find out about you. I've got to learn what your experiences have been, what your principles of life are, how you live your life, how you conduct yourself, how you treat other people. I've got to learn all of that by being around you and getting to know you as an individual. I can't say, well, there's one thing left for me to know about this person, but I know the first 9 of 10 things that I need to know about this person. I already know 9 from the complexion of their skin. There's only one more thing I need to learn. I mean, it doesn't work like that. I don't know anything about a person based on the complexion of their skin. But sadly, for the black community, and for many, not all, obviously, because I'm one, my family see things differently. My family sees things differently. And many people, of course, that I know, particularly in the Christian community, certainly my church sees things differently. But the black community is overwhelmingly in bondage to race. It is the be-all and end-all. I told you about this guy on this podcast who asked this black woman, Are you going to vote for Kamala Harris? Why? And she said, yes, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. Why? Because she's a black woman. Shouldn't there be some discussion of her policies? Doesn't matter. I see her complexion. That's all I need to know. So I just wanted to share that experience with you all. It confirms, so you know, by the way, and here's the thing. So clearly that hostility, based on my experience, this anecdote I've shared with you, was not based on President Trump's race. It's based upon his ideology. Because if they'd had Joe Biden there, oh, it would have been sweetness and cream. It would have been all roses and petals and you know, oh, how honored we are to have the President of the United States here. Because he satisfies their ideological and racial stereotypes. And I'm talking about their stereotypes about themselves. I am black, therefore I like and support Democrats. I don't like or support Republicans because that's what the new racial code dictates. Well, that's right off the Holy Ghost presses. That's interesting, isn't it? Because black folks were controlled in the antebellum South by racial codes. And of course, in the post-war South, after Reconstruction, by racial codes. And now there are new racial codes that they are imposing on themselves. If you are black, you think a certain way, you vote a certain way, you support a certain thing, you support certain people, and you don't ever violate that, because otherwise, as Joe Biden said, you ain't black. Look, I want to urge you to please go to our website, StandAmericaPAC.us, StandAmericaPAC.us, and look at our Save America, Elect Donald Trump project. It's right there on as soon as you go to the homepage, you'll see it. And help us. Help us. We have got, look, we are focused, our project is focused on Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and Ohio. Let me tell you something, folks. Now, please hear me well, because this is extremely important, okay? The fate of our country hangs on this. Phew, man. And I wish I were exaggerating. I wish I were being hyperbolic, but this is just the stark, ugly truth. The fate of our country hangs on this. In fact, I've got a letter coming out about this. If you're on my mailing list, you'll get this letter. If you're not, you can go to StandAmerica.us and sign up for it. The gold standard for black voter turnout was Barack Obama. Barack Obama got 95% of the black vote. 95%. I guess I was the 5%. Well, you know, obviously more than me, but he got 95% of the black vote. That's the gold standard. That's why he became president of the United States. By the way, he lost ground when he ran for re-election, and he only got 92% of the black vote. 92%. It's almost unbelievable just to say it. But it's the power of racial cultism. Joe Biden got only 87% of the black vote, and he was able to win with that. 87%. And he was able to win with that. And whatever cheating they did, whatever violations of prior precedents on how elections are to be conducted, I guess maybe people aren't as incensed when you call them voter irregularities. I call it cheating. Drop boxes and ballot harvesting and all this nonsense. And it's this stuff just universal mail-in ballots. Please have everybody from the graveyard voting. But what we have to make sure of, and I'm coming to my point, I haven't lost it, what we have to make sure of is that Kamala Harris is not successful in playing the race card to the point where we have the opportunity to elect the first black woman president. Oh, this is so exciting. And Billy, Jimmy, John, Laquita, everybody's got to get out and vote. I've never voted. Oh, but you got to vote now. You have an opportunity to vote to elect the first black woman president of the United States. And you end up with long lines at polls equaling what Barack Obama did. Folks, if that happens, we could be looking at President Kamala Harris. Because if that happens, it vastly increases the likelihood that everywhere there's significant black voters, a significant population of black voters, she will win. Pennsylvania, Virginia, which is, man, I hate to think my state is being written off. Lord, please help us to come back to being the state of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and James Monroe and Patrick Henry and George Mason. Please help us, Lord. But 20% of the voters of Virginia are black. North Carolina is gone. Georgia is probably gone. Ohio, a little less likely, but if she wins Pennsylvania, if she wins Georgia, let's forget about Virginia for the moment, and North Carolina, that means any pickups that Trump gets in the Sun Belt, or places like Arizona or Wisconsin, could be completely offset by her wins in all the areas where there's significant black populations. Now, if we get her down to around 80%, 75%, and right now, according to an old group called Data Progress, she has a 75% favorability rating in the black community. And according to CNN, 78% of black people report that they will vote for Kamala Harris, but we're still 96 days away from the election. And you better believe that all the stops are going to be pulled out, and she's got the money to do it, to tell the black community the sky is going to fall in if you don't elect the first black woman president. And unless there is a significant collapse in some of her voter base, if she gets the women, she's the only one who's going to protect our right to abortion. Lord have mercy. She gets minorities thinking, yeah, this is the thing to do because after all, she represents minorities. We could be looking at the unmitigated disaster of Kamala Harris being president of the United States. Folks, that is unthinkable to me. And when I say use the word unthinkable, I mean to imply that my brain rebels against the very notion. Like, I can't intellectually grasp that. I can't wrap my mind around that. It's just too gross. It's too abhorrent. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. Please help us. Please help us, because here's what we did in 2016 and 2020. You may not know this, but you know, STAND is a nonprofit 501c3, so obviously we don't use any resources to support candidates. I'm an individual American citizen with First Amendment liberties, and I have a right to speak my mind, and so does STAND, because STAND is a nonprofit corporation. However, STAND is restricted by IRS rules and regulations to not being able to do certain things with regard to politics, and endorsing candidates is one of them, so we don't. You'll never get a letter from STAND saying STAND endorses Donald Trump, because STAND can't do that, and it doesn't do that. But I'm not STAND. I'm E.W. Jackson. STAND is a separate person. Legally, it's a corporation. But we also have Stand America PAC. Stand America PAC is our political arm. We also have a C4, but it's dormant right now. But we have Stand America PAC, which is a super PAC, and that super PAC does get into politics, of course. We support candidates. We contribute to candidates. Actually, I don't think we can contribute to candidates, but obviously we work in behalf of candidates. We can certainly endorse candidates, and we can do things for candidates. We just can't coordinate with candidates. So we're not coordinating with the Trump campaign at all, okay? But what we did in 2016 and 2020 to great success was we went into communities like in 2020, we spent a lot of money in Georgia. When I say a lot of money, comparatively speaking, probably about $100,000 we spent on primarily gospel radio stations and black radio stations all over Georgia. I think we advertised on about 8 stations all over Georgia, telling the black Christian community particularly, you cannot vote for Joe Biden. Here is what the man stands for. And I want to remind you folks, and by the way, we did that in Pennsylvania, we did that in North Carolina, we did that in Virginia, we've done that in various places around the country based upon the resources we've had to work with. I'd love to do television, but I really need about $1 million to do this job well. Now I can, to do it effectively, okay, given all that's at stake. Now I can do less with less, and we're going to do whatever we can with whatever you contribute, whatever our supporters contribute. But I really need about $1 million. I mean, Kamala Harris has $200 million. I said I went down to Georgia and sort of monitored what was going on the radio stations that we were advertising on, because, of course, the only thing you get if you're not there is an affidavit promising that, guaranteeing that they did, in fact, run the spots. I mean, I give them the benefit of the doubt that they did that. And we did have a way of, so now online, you can go monitor stations online as well. But I just wanted to go down. Of course, I've got my daughter and son-in-law and my granddaughter down there. Of course, she hadn't been born. Now I got plenty of reasons to go now, more reasons to go now. And folks, it was chilling, because I heard spots by Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, and I think a couple of others. But on the radio stations, and so these Democrats, they were plowing the field. But do you know what? The only people, the only black folks who were offering a counter message on those stations was Stand America PAC, yours truly. So when I say we're the only ones doing this, I'm not exaggerating. We are the only ones doing this. So I call people sometimes trying to get donations. They say, well, I'm already giving to this, I'm already giving to that. But you know what? If Donald Trump loses this election because you got a 95% black voter turnout that he could not overcome in these blue states with large black populations, because I was unable to do anything to offset their efforts in the black community, and others were unwilling to do anything, thinking, well, that doesn't really matter. We don't really need that. And we're not going to get anywhere with that voting base anyway. I'll tell you what, we will rue the day. We will rue the day. So, well, can you guarantee that you can change it? No, I can't guarantee, but I tell you what, I would rather leave nothing in the ring. I'd rather know that we did everything in our power. I mean, these people are spending tens of millions of dollars, and I'm talking about spending $1 million. And last time, like I said, we spent about $100,000. But I want to remind you, and we did this all over Georgia, not just in Atlanta. We did this all over Georgia. And I want to remind you that while Donald Trump lost Georgia, again, assuming that this is even a valid count, because we know some shenanigans went down in Georgia as well. But out of 5 million votes cast, he lost by 11,700, I think it's 777 votes. I remember the number. I know it's 11,700 something. I think it's 777. Out of 5 million votes cast. At 11,000. I mean, that's what, 11% of 100,000 votes? And you had 50 times that voting? That means for a percentage, you divide that 10% by 50 times. By 50 times. And what do you get? 1/50th. 1/50th of the 10% of 100,000. I mean, do the math. It is insignificant. I mean, imagine, and I don't know what the vote count was in Georgia for Joe Biden, but imagine he had gotten 1% fewer black votes. And I think the black vote in Georgia is well above 20%. Well above it. I don't remember the exact number, but well above 20%. That means out of 5 million voters, you had at least 1 million black voters. And as a matter of fact, 1% of 1 million black voters, 10% would be 100,000. 1% would be 10,000. I said, so imagine if he had gotten 1.5% more black voters. He would have won. He would have won Georgia. Now, of course, I forget how many states he needed to win that he didn't win in order to become president. But I'm just using that as an example to show you how razor thin these margins are, and how it's not just the size of one's investment, it's the strategic placement of that investment that can make all the difference in the world. I mean, I really believe that if we could have started earlier and say in I was thinking, just this example I'm just giving you is 2020. If we could have started earlier and spent more, who knows what the result would have been? Because, you know, they say you've got to hear a radio spot 7 times before it registers. And we were running spots probably the last month of the campaign. We were doing primarily radio because we were targeting the black audiences, and we were targeting stations that we knew they were listening to. And we were doing primarily 4, 5, in some cases, maybe 6 spots a day, knowing that people who are listening to the radio aren't going to be listening all the time. So how long do you have to keep those spots running in order for one person to have heard the spot 7 times and finally say, oh, wait a minute, what is that? A week? 2 weeks? Help us. Help us. We cannot have Kamala Harris elected president of the United States. It just can't happen. But we're going to win it at the ballot box. That's where we've got to win it. And as Donald Trump has said, and others as well, I mean, we've got to win so overwhelmingly that there's just no questioning and no shenanigans will overcome the level of the margin of victory. Help us. I'm not saying that for me. I'm saying it for our country. I'm not even really saying it for Donald Trump, although obviously I want Donald Trump to be president. That's the mechanism for the end goal. I was going to say that's the end goal. That's not the end goal. You know what the end goal is? Save America. That's the end goal. Donald Trump is an instrument and a stepping stone to that end goal. And I don't mean in any way to diminish his importance, but Donald Trump's a human being on the earth right now. He's not going to stay here. At some point, God forbid, when he's old and lived out the full measure of his years, not by any assassin's bullet or any such wickedness like that. But eventually, just like you and me, if Jesus tarries, he's leaving. I'm leaving, you're leaving, we're all leaving. But we want America to remain the land of the free. And that can't happen unless we are also the home of the brave. And the brave have to be willing to give their time, their talent, their tithe, or whatever amount of money they are moved to give, in order to make sure that we can pass on a legacy of hope and opportunity and prosperity to our posterity. So I'm not asking for me. You know, I mean, in a sense, I can say just as Donald Trump says, although obviously his situation is very different than mine in terms of the magnitude of the impact that he's having. But I can certainly say like he says, and many others can too. I mean, I don't really need this. I could be spending time with my granddaughter. I could be, out in the woods shooting and hunting and I could be doing all kinds of stuff. I could be having fun. I could be traveling. But I know that God has called us to this moment, and we've got to take a stand. That's why I named the organization Stand. Staying true to America's national destiny. Stand. We've got to take a stand. I mean, I know you can feel the same way. Look, I don't have to be giving my money to that. You're spending my money on whatever little thing strikes your fancy. But I'm asking you to make a sacrifice. And somewhere out there is somebody can plunk down $1 million. Well, you and I keep pushing. I've got an automatic donation to our PAC every single month. My wife and I do that. An automatic donation. See, because my pastor used to say, you can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead where you won't go. And you can't reap what you won't sow. So, believe me, when I ask you to give, believe me, my wife and I give. Because we got to put our money where our mouth is. And by the way, and I'm grateful to all the people of like mind, and praise God, there are a bunch of them. I've been giving you different numbers, and I'm a little bit hesitant to give you this one because I've gotten different numbers, and we're still trying to work this all out with our database and make sure we're accurate. But it appears I'll leave it at this so that I don't have to then come back and correct myself again for the moment. But we've got well over 300 Patriot Partners. Well over 300. I thought the number was much less than that after COVID, but we did some adjusting and reconsidering. And I'm talking about, now when I say we, I'm talking about STAND, the nonprofit side now. The PAC side operates a little bit differently because, say, for example, if you sign up to give a recurring donation to the PAC, that has to end after the election cycle. It has to start up again when there's a new project or new purpose for that the PAC is pursuing. In other words, you're giving to something specific. Apparently, it's just not appropriate to just kind of give on an ongoing basis to a PAC, although I don't quite know why when you agree with the general mission of the PAC. So that ends, and then you have to start up all over again doing that. Whereas the nonprofit, we have people who've been Patriot Partners with us for years. We have people who've been Patriot Partners with us for a decade. Just giving that $5, $10, at $10, at $25, at $50. And my wife and I do the same thing with ministries that we support, and Stan does the same thing with ministries that we support, giving because we believe in what we're doing. Sacrificially. Because sometimes I feel, remember Araunah's threshing floor that David wanted to use to make a sacrifice for God, to God, after he had messed up and done a count of the people against the will and plan of God. And Araunah said, you don't have to buy this threshing floor from me. I'll give it to you as a gift. And David said, I will not offer to the Lord that which costs me nothing. Remember that? David said, no, I will surely buy it at a price. David said, I don't want this to be easy. I want this to be sacrificial. So I just ask you, pray for us. You may be watching me right now and thinking to yourself, Bishop, I'm out. I'm out of place. So, and I understand that. Pray for us then. But if you can give, I don't care whether it's $5, $10, $25, whatever it is. Of course, everything has gone up in years past. The advertising spots we did, particularly the ones on the radio, relatively cheap. Running anywhere from with a small radio station to $25 and $30 to a larger radio station to $500 a spot. So it can run the gamut. It can run that range. Up in Northern Virginia, we did spots. Those spots cost us $500 per spot. So if you give $25, $50, you're going to be buying a spot for us. Maybe you give $500, you'll be buying probably 10 spots, or 25, 10 spots, or 20 spots. Or maybe in one of these more expensive areas. Atlanta's the same thing. Same thing in the heart of Atlanta. Very, very, very expensive to advertise in the heart of Atlanta. But we did it. We did it because of your generosity, because of those who supported us. But I'm really believing God for that $1 million donor to say, here, go do it. Go help save this country. That's going to be a very specific and strategic donation. That somebody knows this is not going to accomplish the same things that would be accomplished by giving to the RNC or even giving to the Trump campaign, because they got the whole country that they're trying to focus on. And they got all these battleground states that they're trying to reach everybody. They got to turn out their vote. We are very strategic and surgical in what we're trying to do. We were focused on Christian voters and black voters, but now with 96 days left, we're focused strictly on black voters, and Kamala Harris now as the nominee, we're focused strictly on black voters because we know we've got to blunt the race card that she's going to play in order to have a massive turnout of those voters, which will indeed likely make the difference in these heavily urban, highly dense populations of black voters, these states that have that. So I just wanted to let you all know we are in this fight to win, folks, because we simply cannot afford to have Kamala Harris as president of the United States. America can't stand it. We've already suffered enough degeneration, enough depravity, and enough loss. I mean, can you imagine the exponential decline we will experience under a woman who is A, incompetent, B, a puppet of a bunch of far left moneyed globalists, homosexuals, you name it. I mean, who knows? Maybe she'll appoint RuPaul as the Secretary of Education. So she can go, because RuPaul's a guy, isn't he? So he can go sexualize our children. in the educational system around the country. I know I'm being a little bit absurd. I don't think RuPaul. I think RuPaul's probably making plenty of money as a sexual deviant and pervert that he doesn't need to take on that, and probably is not competent to take on something like that. Although the Democrat Party standards don't include competence anymore anyway. Witness their nominee for the Democrat for the presidency. So competence is not even on the table. Apparently, color, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity. Now, all of those count a lot. All the rest doesn't matter. Because they don't need people to be competent. What they need people to be is compliant. That's what they need. You know, you just be the face, and we'll tell you what to do. Which is not a problem, because most of them are in complete agreement with this sick agenda. But folks, we cannot have Kamala Harris as president of the United States. It just can't. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. Now I say that again, emphasizing, beat these people at the ballot box. Beat these people at the ballot box. That is what I'm saying. That is all I'm saying. I just want to make that crystal clear. So when I say it cannot happen, I don't mean, well, then do anything that, no. Beat them at the ballot box. That's what we've got to do. And my contribution to this effort is to make sure that she does not get 95%, 92%, 90% of the black vote, but that she stays down in those lower levels. If we can keep her to where she is right now, somewhere in the 75% range, or even lower that, boy, that would be an accomplishment. But if we could do that, that will be golden. But if we allow her to play the race card to the point where she's got, you know, this massive hysteria going on, we got a chance to re-elect the first black woman. Oh, Lord. Oh. We'll be in trouble. Let's make sure we're not. Okay? God bless everybody. I've got a board meeting tomorrow, so I will not be with you live tomorrow, but please tune in because we'll have something good for you. Okay? And I will be back with you live next week. In the meantime, stand up, step up, speak up, and refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.